There's so many fascinating details, not only including the bank run, but also the latest updates with the French Rocky Balboa. But as we know, for weeks now, the mainstream media, especially the Western mainstream media, has been counting out the yellow vest movement, saying that they're dying out. This is something that we've been telling you was going to happen. Not only the attacks from the mainstream media, but tampering out a little bit because of the cold, because of the holidays. But we told you something that the mainstream media didn't tell you was the fact that this movement's going to come back bigger and stronger than ever, and we could definitely expect a European spring. And it came back quicker than we even expected, as we saw so many people, massive crowds just moments ago, just this Saturday ago, for the ninth installment of the Yellow Vest protests, growing than all the other ones combined. This on the fact that the French government actually warned protesters, saying that they will be persecuting people for protesting without a permit, shows a significant increase in this movement and shows how it's spreading not only in Paris, but also all of France and the entire world. And you guys should know our coverage of the Yellow Vest movement is being censored, as all of the videos that I just released from France are demonetized, are up for review. And when videos are demonetized and up for review, this means automatically the algorithm does not allow other people to see it in the suggested, in the search engines. And you saw our videos, some of them that got millions of views from our coverage down there, that beat out the mainstream media. You typed it into the search engine, you didn't get that. You got lower ranked videos from CNN, Fox News, and other propaganda media outlets. So just know our coverage is being censored while the mainstream media and their narratives are being pushed. And their narratives are just utterly, truly disgusting, awful, filth. Would be a compliment to the trash that mainstream media is putting out about this yellow vest movement, as we even saw by the Mirror that's talking about how the yellow vest movement is standing for child abuse and Brexit because of a leaflet that they saw randomly at one of the demonstrations, which shows you how just desperate, how much they're just grasping at the straws to try to defame this movement by showing up, grabbing a random flyer, which correctly one idiot could have printed out, or could have been even a false flag attempt, and said, this represents the entire movement, and now the yellow vests stand for child abuse, which is absolutely disgusting. We saw the same thing also in Canada with the CBC, an article which was pointed to me by Leah. And this one starts off with the title, "Don't Dismiss Them as Crackpots. Who are Canada's yellow vest protesters?" And of course, this article is another scathing hit piece on this larger movement, talking about how they're trying to all attack Trudeau. Again, just more and more disinformation. And this is information just happening with English speaking text. The propaganda in France is even higher than it is in the United States, Canada, and in the United Kingdom, to the point where yellow vest protesters are seeking vigilante justice. And when they're seeing news reporters, mainstream media news reporters at the protest, they're beating the crap out of them. Just like we saw this Saturday in Rouen, where a journalist from a liberal publication brought out a team of bodyguards to try to report on the yellow vest movement, which literally created a brawl. We also seen other movement of a journalist who got fly kicked and dropped to the ground because the crowd thought he worked for BMF TV, which is the French equivalent of CNN. And being there on the ground yesterday, I saw a number of journalists being pelted with rocks, with bottles. I saw a number of reporters have their cameras taken away. I saw a lot of fights between protesters, and it wasn't a very easy situation to be in, especially with me there with my camera, my DSLR, and also my live stream. Because again, I don't speak French. No parlez-vous français over here. I could, do my, but that doesn't really change the fact that I'm still a journalist And incorrectly, a lot of the yellow vest movement are seeking vigilante justice against journalists, mainly because the media has been attacking them. And it's to understand here why the media attacks a movement that is filled with people on the left, filled with people on the right, and is also filled with moderates who are calling for a bigger kind of change, a bigger kind of uh, um, discussion to be had that, of course, the mainstream media is not facilitating. And the media, by and large, generally does support the European Union, does support the government, does support Macron, especially in France, and does support bankers. And as we know, Macron, the president of France, is a former Rothschild banker. All establishment um, figures that, of course, the mainstream media caters to. And in the larger yellow vest movement, this is all of their grievances that they have against. The French protesters are even calling for a Frexit. And as we saw this past Saturday, they were angry and destroyed an EU flag, which is illegal in a lot of parts of Europe. And a lot of these people are just sick of the system, which they deem unfair, and are having a hard time to survive and put food on their table. And this yellow vest movement wants some kind of justice to be had, wants these larger institutions to be held responsible for these actions. And the biggest institution that they're going after is, of course, the banks, is, of course, um, the establishment that caters to them, that has created the 2008 financial crisis, has benefited off of it, and is still benefiting off of it, with, of course, the national debt in countries like France rising, especially after that crisis. And the yellow vest movement, by and large, generally wants to have a similar revolution that happened in Iceland, like we saw in 2009 with the pots and pans revolution, a revolution that you don't hear much about because guess what? The banksters have special interests with not only governments, but also the mainstream media establishment. And you have to understand, in the world where governments print out their own money and record number of debt here, even in the United States, within the past 10 years, the US national debt almost increased almost 3 times. And this is a debt, this is a burden levied on the people by the banksters, by made up rules that they play by that are ultimately unfair to the people. And that's why we're seeing this kind of larger accountability by the yellow vest movement being directly pointed at the banksters, being directly calling for the pots and pans revolution, and calling for a bank run to, of course, have a major effect on them. Now, with the banksters' control and influence of government and media, you could bet your bottom dollar you're not going to hear a lot of the information that they want you to hear, especially when it comes to people de-investing from these major financial institutions, because a lot of these institutions that people have a lot of grievances with, they ultimately run on people's participation in it. So when people are calling for that withdrawal, when people are withdrawing for it, expect a lot of disinformation when it comes around those specific topics, and expect those results not to be documented and shared with you, because obviously there's been so much disinformation, there's been so much lies and propaganda spread about the yellow vest movement. There's no way that we're going to hear accurate reports of banks saying, yeah, this many people disinvested. I saw some reports of ATMs being down, of some banks closing on independent media outlets. But I am still investigating this because accuracy matters. And I'm still talking to my sources right now to get a full list and report of what happened from exactly the yellow vest movement's point of view. And I will be fact checking that and reporting on it later. But as of now, I just saw one small report. Still have to confirm it. Don't expect a lot of truth. Don't expect a lot of honest reporting from this because, again, this is the Achilles heel, that participation that we're all involved in, that we could cut in a matter of seconds that the Yellow Vest movement is bringing attention to. And the Yellow Vest movement has already been successful in many different ways, not only having the president say publicly that he will never bow down to the list of demands that they have, and they kind of released a very general one, and then shortly after relinquishing that belief and going to some of those demands. Still hasn't gone far enough, according to many people's opinions. But the Yellow Vest movement has been very active in many other ways. That has been incredible. They destroyed over 60% of France's speed cameras. Speed cameras that, of course, are tied into a private company that, of course, the French government sold the rights to fine people. And the Yellow Vest movement is literally going all around France, destroying speed cameras and stopping toll booths, so the government and the private quasi corporations that they sell out to can't make a profit off of them. And that's something that the Yellow Vests want to stop and are stopping, and it is having a major effect. And these ideas, as well as the idea of a public referendum system, are ideas that run against the establishment, and that's why we're seeing such a huge disinformation campaign. Another major demand of the Yellow Vest movement is for the RIC, which is, again, a referendum system like the state of California has, but the French people want it on a national level in France, where they get to decide and vote on issues like, say, marijuana legalization that we saw in California that was passed by the people. So that's one of their demands. And the French government, when hearing all of this, when hearing these kind of rebukes of the banking system, the media system, the government system, their only response to the larger injustices that they have facilitated is, well, we're going to clamp down even more on you, and we're going to use more violence trying to silence you because you want to wear a yellow vest representing your displeasure with us. And we're seeing them go heavy-handed more than ever before, and it's always an increase of the heavy-handed activity that we are seeing, to the point where now we are seeing dramatic footage of helicopters shooting tear gas into crowds. And this is, again, not Turkey, not in the Middle East, not a despotic nation. This is in the European Union with no major outcry from the mainstream media. When similar events unfolded in countries that the United States and the U.S. State Department wanted to overthrow, there were running headlines and video clips talking about, look at all these horrible people being gassed. We're not seeing any of that in the mainstream media right now, which should make you concerned and make you raise a lot of issues when it comes to this specific cause. And it's not just tear gas from helicopters that's being thrown. We're also seeing French riot police now being armed with semi-automatic weapons with live ammunition, and even a protocol, a last resort protocol that the French government has to release a chemical weapon that could stop the Yellow Vest movement from taking over key government buildings in Paris. This is absolutely insane to be seen to the level that it has gotten to. An insane level that I think will lead to a death very, very soon by the hand of the state. And I have to say, it's incredibly lucky that that already hasn't happened already, with the sheer amount of violence by the state, by the police, which we have been documenting, which we have been targeted of, which I've been water cannoned yesterday because of. And we've seen people lose eyes. We've seen people lose hands. We've seen even 10 people die linked to, of course, this Yellow Vest protest because of accidents. But I do believe with the violence increasing, that there will be a death that happens on the hand of the state that will create a kind of V for Vendetta moment that will change the game and change the landscape, because the amount of violence that the police forces are using indiscriminately is an outcry and should be a major issue that everyone should be talking about, but no one is, because they control the narrative, they control the mainstream media, and when we talk about it, we get censored and demonetized. We're seeing horrible, horrible footage of people just getting shot with rubber bullets. It is a miracle that people have survived and people haven't died already on behests of the state. And again, the 10 deaths that are linked to the yellow vests are linked because of accidents. But again, I do think that there will be death by the state that will be a game changer. Now, when it comes to the French Rocky Balboa, this is a very interesting story that I believe proves my kind of theory that this will happen, because we have this man, Christopher Dettinger, who was a former boxer, who right now is in jail because of a viral video of him fighting back against the riot police. And according to him, this former boxer was there with his wife and a friend who was battling cancer, and he saw police tear gassing people, hurting people with flashbangs, with rubber bullets. And he got angry, especially when his wife and his friend were tear gassed for no reason. He decided to say that he's going to defend himself. And this is where the viral video of him fighting back comes from. He is now in jail, and people have raised 114,000 euros for his defense. And we saw the huge crowds of people literally chant his name in one of the largest ninth versions of the yellow vest movement yesterday. This is only an epitome of bigger things to come, as we're seeing violence ramp up on both sides of the spectrum. Again, I am not, a fan of violence. I've seen it happen to a lot of the journalists out there. I worry it's going to happen to me. So far, it has happened to me on behests of the French state, and I do see the French state, as I saw yesterday, as I saw in my previous time covering the Yellow Vest movement, initiate and start the violence. They are the ultimate initiators of it, and it will only get worse from here until that crescendo moment that I talked about. That could happen next week, that could happen 10 weeks from now. But ultimately, you have to understand it's going to happen sometime soon, because the Yellow Vest movement is not going away anytime soon. Expect a more detailed report when I find out more direct information about the exact bank run. This is an incredibly fascinating development that we will be covering closely, as we have been on the ground and with all of our sources in France, with, of course, more expected trips by me there.